biggest challenge when you started?
Well, I started in Florida, so Florida wasn't a very big beer. It's a big beer drinking state, but they weren't into as much of the styles that I was into. When I moved way out of town, I got into more different styles of beer.
Like what?
IPAs and stouts and things like that. Stuff that you weren't finding, Belgian beers. Florida had some really backwards laws back in the day. When I grew up here, away to go to school, moved away for a job for a few years, and then came back. When I moved out of state, I realized that there's a whole beer world out there that we weren't really exposed to in Florida, because there was antiquated beer laws here that limited what kind of beers we were getting in the state. So, and this dates back to the 60s and 70s.
How so? With coming from the Prohibition era, or
sort of? It actually came from my understanding of it came from a battle that Miller and Budweiser had with the state legislatures.
Really?
Yeah.
So, can you tell us more?
Yeah. So the state legislature, Anheuser-Busch and Miller were both talking about building a brewery in Florida, and Anheuser-Busch went and built a brewery in Florida, and Miller did not. And so Anheuser-Busch got the state legislature to pass a law that said you can only get beer in 8, 12, 16, and 32-ounce bottles.
That was their size.
That was those sizes. Miller had a 7-ounce bottle. But now, if you have any concept of beer bottle sizes, you'll know that most Europeans don't come in any of those sizes. They come in milliliters and liters. So you're talking a whole different measuring system. So typically
ounces and
a 330 milliliter bottle in Europe is 11.2 ounces. A 750 milliliter bottle is 25.4 ounces. Not legal in Florida. So for all those years, none of those beers could come into the state that would expose any of the beer drinkers that lived here to those styles that were coming from all across the country. Now, places like California that were getting those beer styles were like, oh, these are really good. I'd like to brew something like this. So you had home brewers that were trying to brew beers like that, and then you have the market growing and people exposed to it and people growing it. And so we're 10 to 20 years behind the curve. We've always been. And when I first started back in the state, moved back here, was home brewing, started my own brewing business. People didn't even understand what craft beer was. I mean, it was just microbrew beer, and it was just the stuff that wouldn't sell, and nobody knew what it was. And so that was the most challenging part, was getting people exposed to the different styles, educating public about, what beer is supposed to taste like, as opposed to this fizzy yellow liquid that everybody was drinking in the state of Florida.